This is Joe and Lance with JVP Ventures. We are doing our Q4 end of year review on 5658 Main Street in South River. A lot of good stuff on this property. We're going to kind of just jump around on a couple things, but I always like to kind of start with the numbers. Everyone's been getting steady distributions on this property. They've been increasing kind of as the year went on. We had very minimal repairs, as a lot of you remember. The first year of this project was a lot of electrical increases that were kind of outside of our hand because of still a pending lawsuit that's not finalized yet on not disclosing panel upgrades and using the proper amped breakers and whatnot. All right. So when we bought this property, the rent was at $26,000 a month, 26.5 roughly. Okay. And at the end of this year, we just did our rental target increases on all the tenants for this year. We'll be closing out the year with a total pending, so as in everyone paying their rent, at just over $38,000.
Yeah,
so
it's a huge increase.
Significant increase there. Okay. So what does that mean? It really means two things. Mm-hmm. One is everyone's distros go up, right? Because the cash on cash continues to climb. We'll be well over 20% cash on cash at the end of the year on this target point, with going into another set of increases for the following year. Okay. Why the increases there are so unique is it's kind of broken down into two tiers, right? Okay. So we have our 1-bedroom apartments, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and then we have a few 4-bedroom apartments in this place, right? It's all rented by basically Portuguese, Hispanic, multiple families living in the same units.
The same demographic.
In the same demographic, all working class individuals. We have a waiting list still on apartments. We actually have had one turn, and that was the second month we owned the property, and we haven't had a turn since.
Yeah, think about that. That's amazing.
If you
have a waiting list to get in.
If you talk about all the properties that we own or I own individually or like cumulatively with some other people within this property, is we are constantly turning tenants. Yeah. Right. So this property is really top notch when you look at it from that perspective. So with that being said, this next set of increases, they're already majority accepted across the board, because what these people are doing is they're taking that $200 increase and they're splitting it up amongst 4, 5, 6 people. Yeah. Right. So it's a very easy thing for them to absorb. So now at the end of this year, all property, or this entire property, just the residential, we'll get to commercial in a second, are 100% at market value or slightly above market value. Okay. So the target point is to get the rent to $40,000. Within a year or two after this last increase, because we're going to start going to more normal increases when it comes to that. Okay. The second piece here is we have the rent separated technically into two scenarios. We have the rent cost, and then we have what's called a utility cost, because this building has furnaces and nothing is separately metered per apartment. Yeah. Okay. So what we did there was, if someone's rent is $2,000, we then take what we think is a fair utility bill for their heating. That's across the board. So we basically took the $15,000 per year bill for heating the apartments, and we basically zeroed it out by passing that expense on in just a line item.
Yeah, and there was no pushback on that either.
There was zero pushback. They understood that, right? So we control all the meters as well. They're in the hallway, so we lock box them and they're set at a certain temperature. And if something isn't working in the apartments, they let us know based on that.
Yeah, no one's putting the heat on 90.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? So this last quarter, the only repairs we really had was we had one bathroom replacement. There was a leak, and we basically just decided to replace the bathroom. It was time. It was about a $5,000 or $6,000 expense. There was a small roof repair that was leaking down, which we took care of. There was an electrical upgrade in one of the commercial buildings that they did illegally, that they actually had to pay for. So it was no cost on us. We supervised to make sure that the town passed it. And we've had 0 evictions on the commercial and the residential. You know, we have some late payments, but we always get paid on that scenario. Okay. Lawsuit is still pending on the electrical fire when we first bought the building. I believe February 8th is the date for the first round in East Brunswick in the courts there. So we should have a clear direction pretty soon on when that's going to settle. Okay. Just to touch on the commercial side, we have 2 restaurants, barbershop, and a Metro PCS and another store down there. They're all on normal increases. They're all on long-term leases. The spaces are really valuable there. So if we were to turn a tenant, it would fill very, very fast. But we have 3 of the 5 commercial on 10-year leases that aren't set to expire until after 2030. So really strong, all at market value with normal increases on a yearly basis, $50 to $100. So the building overall is in a really good spot. So I'm very confident to say that 2024 is going to be a fantastic year there. We'll get reimbursed that money from the lawsuit this year, whatever that ends up being. But overall, I'm just going to pass this to Lance now to kind of understand. We've spoken about refinancing this property, and he's going to kind of go through the rates.
Yeah, the original plan for this property was to purchase it and increase the rents to market value, which will then in turn increase the value of the property to refinance and pull cash out to disperse out to the members of or the owners of the property, so they can kind of get a return of capital back. De-risks them in a way.
Correct.
It just absolutely does not make sense at this point in time because the interest rate on the property is in the mid 3s. So when you have to refinance to an interest rate that could be 8, 9, 10%, why am I going to give up a 3.5% or a 3.75% interest rate just to pull cash out? So there will be a point in time where that does make sense. It's just not at the current time. We are seeing interest rates having a little bit of effect of pulling back. It still might be a year and a half before we may be able to see a refinance where it makes sense. But until we see some pull back larger amount in the interest rate market, we're not going to see a cash out refinance because it just doesn't make financial sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So right now, guys, just for clarification, Lance is spot on. 3.75 is the interest rate there. Yeah. So if we were to refinance at 6%, we would probably only sell the building for what we paid for it, or refinance it and it would be appraised at the same price, which doesn't make sense because we've done ample increases on rents. When you're buying big multi-units like this, 18 units is what this property is, we increased the rent 30% at the end of this year. So the way that I look at it is we added $1 million to $1.5 million of equity to this property. Okay. If we do that now, it's really going to only show maybe $500,000 or $600,000. Yeah, listen, is it great? But it's not ideal, especially when this year everyone's going to be making between 12 and 15% back on their first year investment. Okay, plus what they made this year. So from a targeting perspective, if rates were to drop into the mid 4s again, I would highly consider doing a refinance there because I know that I would list this property for $6 million at that point, right? Whether we were to sell it and 1031 exchange it into something larger, or you just sell it or we just do a refinance and pull all the cash out, right? There's a lot of options there. So that's why that's kind of off the table right now. Like what Lance said, and a lot of you know, if you're following the marketplace, rates are going to pull back a lot. But right now, the cheapest rates that I'm seeing on a commercial side are like mid 6s. So it doesn't make sense to add 3 points to an interest rate plus prepayment penalties and some other things that come with these loans.
Now, are those mid rates in the mid 6s? Are they for DSCR loans or are they?
No, those are like actual bank loans. So that's not going to be debt service or
which is what we traditionally like.
Exactly, right? So like those loans are always going to be a little higher because those rates are in the mid 7s right now, right? Mid 7s to low 8s. So if I were to go back and refinance this property, we're going to go with a big bank like Provident or regional style bank that's going to give us a rate of a sub 4%.
Correct.
Right. So yeah, that's basically our review on this. Expect your Q1 distribution in the upcoming 2 or 3 weeks. And
then seeing a gradual increase in those distributions. As rents continue to increase, so will the distributions as long as we can keep expenses in line.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You'll get an email shortly with all the info and we'll get rolling. And if anyone has any questions, always feel free to reach out.
We're here.